Hi, I'm August Keller, and this is my review of Moana 2. I don't think I'm surprising anyone here when I say Moana 2 is a downgrade. It really amplifies the flaws and softens the strengths of the original. It has a character arc, but it's very faint, and that's because it's weakly set up. Because the protagonist is nearly flawless. Looks like they didn't want to give her too much of a struggle, so when she does make a change, it's not particularly satisfying. There's a lot of explanatory dialogue, excessive side characters, digressions that seem to set up sequels more than serve the movie itself. The stakes are very vague. The triumph feels pretty mediocre, mostly because that arc is fairly faint. And the resolution I found to be rather unpacked. It kind of opens up a discussion, and it seems like the movie doesn't really want to have that discussion. Um, Meanwhile, because there's less heart, the movie just doesn't really earn the same amount of heart as the previous one. Because of that, the predictability is less forgivable. The last movie was formulaic, but it was okay because it created emotional investment. There's less emotional investment here, so the flaws are more obvious. On that note, the script may follow a very functional formula, but I found the ingredients to be kind of a cluster of muddled bits. All these flaws kind of start to really stack up, and it kind of feels like a very loosely fitting script here. You know, um, Meanwhile, the acting has personality and singing abilities, but each individual performance feels confined to one note. Like I said, the arc feels weak and faint, so there isn't much of a journey there, and all the side characters kind of cramp each other, so they're all just kind of doing their one bit. There are moments of range and vulnerability, but it's pretty slight, almost non existent. It's just minimal. So, yeah, there just isn't the same vulnerable longing. The first movie was really driven by her sense of adventure. She wanted to explore. This movie doesn't have that conflict, that internal conflict, and so there isn't as much vulnerability, and the adventure doesn't feel as exciting. It just kind of feels like a task. Um, so yeah, all this is to say that Moana 2 feels like it's kind of like it's going through the motions, unfortunately. It goes through the motions competently, but there just isn't as much emotional magic here as there was in the previous one. Not that the previous one was some work of art masterpiece, but the energy that one had is diminished here in almost every way. Uh, and that kind of bleeds over into the technicals. So technically, I think this movie has Moana 2 has frills. It's got a lot of things that should work, but it's all kind of undercut by the stifled emotions. The editing has these jazzy set pieces and a tight runtime, but that's more or less offset by fumbled momentum and a meandering structure. Um, like I said, this movie just kind of is missing the emotional thrust, and that really kind of comes across in the editing. Uh, Despite some proactive movement and framing, the imagery is very active, but it's missing this composed beauty of the original. Again, because there are less emotions, there's less emotions to build off of. So a shot can look nice, I guess, but there's not emotional weight to it like there was in the last one. Also, the last one had a lot more like scenic landscapes and backgrounds, which I think, they're here passively, but I don't think they're like ever like showcased like they were in the last one. On the other hand, the sound is about the same quality. It has the genre elements and some cartoony, comedic stings, and there is some muting at the climax that I think is very effective. So the sound is good. Um, The music, is obviously going to be overshadowed by the original Moana. The music in the original Moana is, some of the best music in a movie in the last, 20 years. So there was no way this movie was going to live up to that one in that front. But I do think the music is decent. It has original songs. They're fine, kind of forgettable, but they're good. Uh, but it's hard to compare. You're just always going to notice that they're not as good as the last one. The production design remains culturally informed. Nothing really new that I noticed, but it's still good. Similarly, the cast is about the same as the last movie. It has the same star power, the same representation, so it's good. Um, and the CGI, the effects, they do the water textures well, which I hear is very hard to do. But beyond that, I found it kind of, you know, standard. The character textures, the landscapes. I mean, some of the details nice in the hair and stuff like that, but I didn't find it to be advancing the medium in any kind of way like Pixar continually does, or even the previous one. The first Moana, I think the water was more impressive then. Now it's like kind of expected. It's still very good. Um, so yeah, all that is to say that I think Moana 2 isn't bad. It's just a little underwhelming. I think fans of the original, or detractors of the original, are just going to notice that this one isn't as good as the original. And it's just kind of what happens with sequels. There's a shadow that it's living up to. Um, and this movie just kind of is okay, pretty good, fine, mediocre, somewhere in that range. I don't think it's bad, like I said, but I do find myself mostly indifferent. It just doesn't really seem to have a spark, a purpose like the first one did, and it really does kind of feel like a sequel, a competently made sequel, but a sequel made because they knew it was going to make money. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. If you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to like or subscribe. I also have an Instagram linked in the description. I would love support there as well. But at the very least, I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.